Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for calling me an African. I am American. My mom says I'm her American daughter that thinks she's African. But Ghana was home to me for maybe 8 years, and it still is. I lived and worked here, and it's always good to be back. Thank you, Lucy, for having me. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to share my story. I think that I've had a chance to hear many of the speakers today, and there's just so much that's been shared that every time I think I know what I'm going to talk about, I think to shift it in a different way. And so what I'd like to do is share some stories about my experiences that are very vulnerable and also very authentic. Because I think that in doing that, you'll have an opportunity to understand that while we're here celebrating the bold new normal, what I'd love to do, and it's not take over Lucy's marketing at all, but it's to say that bold is the new normal. And it's the way that we should be, and the way that we should show up, and the way that we can have other people experience us. The challenge is that once you step into that, all of the forces of kindness will act against you. Because what people don't want is for you to be bold. They don't want you to shave your hair. They don't want you to have tattoos. Well, at least my mother doesn't want that for me at all. And they don't want you to find your experience in the ways that you dress, or the way that you speak, or the things that you think are right, and even the things that you choose to disagree with. And so boldness comes at a cost. It comes at a cost to your career. It comes at a cost to your family. It comes at a cost to your friendships. It comes at a cost to you financially. It comes at a cost to you socially. And I hope that if I get to share a little of that, you'll understand what it means to be bold and why you shouldn't shy away from it, and why the global world would be a better place if you actually do, even if your mother doesn't like your hair. It's okay. My mom will be 93 in 6 weeks. I'm very blessed to have her in my life, but she still doesn't like my hair. She doesn't like the way I dress. She doesn't like that I come to Africa for the weekend. She's like, how do you just fly to Ghana for the weekend? I said, 1, for Lucy, 2, to shop. Okay? And 3, because it's important to be able to share the stories. I'm a globalist. I'm a global human. I grew up in a town in New Jersey. If you know the U.S. and you know the East Coast, I'm closest to New York City. So I grew up in North Jersey, right outside of New York City. And I currently live in Washington, D.C. Where I'm from and where I was born, I don't come from wealth. My father was a musician. He grew up singing in the United States, what was called a record company called Tough Records. Very, very popular television show was made about it called Cadillac Records. So if you've ever seen a U.S. movie with Beyonce in it, it's called Cadillac Records. It talks about what happened to black people that came from the north, from the south, up to the north, singing. My father was a recording artist with his brothers, and they were very popular. My father's been deceased for almost 15 years now, but I still hear his music on the radio. And I think when I look at what being bold is, it started with my parents. My mother married a man that I didn't know. She had 2 children. And then in the 1960s, she divorced him. That's very unheard of in America for a black woman to divorce a man in the 60s. He wasn't a good man from what I understand, and she chose to live her life without him and to take her 2 children. And my understanding is my grandmother didn't support that, and my mom graduated from high school, put herself through some training, and became an executive at a telecom company in the United States called New Jersey Bell, which has eventually become Lucent Technologies, Telcordia Technologies, Bell Telephone. It's become many different popular names today. One you might know of is called Verizon. So my mom worked at what was then Verizon in 1960, I don't know, maybe 61, 62, I wasn't born. My father then sang all the way to the north and ended up at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, where he and his brothers sang and recorded music and made no money at all because the record industry rewarded black people by buying them Cadillacs and cars. And my father thought, hey, I'll take a Cadillac. He didn't know that he needed to own the rights to his music. And so he sang and he performed, but he didn't make any money. And so eventually they left the record industry. But in the process of coming north, my aunts, who were married to his brothers, met my mother in Newark, New Jersey, where they lived in like apartment building that my uncle owned, my mother's brother. And they met my mother, thought she was pretty, said there's one more brother, he doesn't have a wife, and they put the two of them together. And my very, very bold father married this very, very bold woman who divorced a man that wasn't good to her and built a career on her own. And my mom was 8 years older than my father and had 2 children. And so I think that being born from a group of people like that, you can't help but be bold. I got this crazy singing man marrying this old lady, and together they have these kids. My mom starts all over again. At 36 years old, when my siblings were on their way to high school. No, my sister was a sophomore in high school, my brother was a senior, and my mother had me. So I'm happy to be here, but I don't know if I would have done that at that age. And my siblings graduated from high school and left the house, and I grew up in the house with my parents, who were older, and they left behind a globe and some encyclopedias. And so I grew up spinning this globe, saying I was going to go travel the world and I'm going to change the world. And I'm this girl from Newark whose parents don't necessarily have any money, and my mom thinks I'm nuts. She's just like, where are you going? And I would spin the map. Oh, I'm going to Germany. I'd spin the map. I'm going to Africa one day. Oh, I'm going to go to the UK one day. And my mom's like, we're from New Jersey. And my mother has never been anywhere outside of New Jersey in her entire life until my father took her to the South where he was born. And my father would say, I say, Daddy, I want to change the world. And he was like, change it. It's better than any day in New Jersey. Go change the world. My mother would say, And not because she didn't believe in me, but because she's a mom. And she's just trying to protect this very gregarious, loudmouth little chubby girl that grew up in the backyard singing songs and writing fake newspapers and selling, Girl Scout cookies. If you know what a Girl Scout is in the States, I sold Girl Scout cookies. But anything I did, I wanted to be the best at it. So if we're going to sell Girl Scout cookies, I want to win all the prizes. If somebody needs a babysitter, I'm going to hire all my friends, get them to babysit the kids and give me a percentage of their money. So I did that. I never babysat a kid. I said, you, and you. We're all Girl Scouts together. You babysit all the kids. I negotiate. I get the money. I pay you. I take my profit. This is the way that I grew up. This is the boldness that I embraced as a kid. I just knew I needed to have some cash, and I needed to be able to go places, and I wanted to run a business. I had no idea what it meant. But this bold inertia was inside of me until it wasn't. All of a sudden, something happened in this second decade of my life. It's when the world comes for you and they try to take away this courage that you have inside of you. This courage that comes from them not even knowing who you are. Maybe you don't even know who you are. You just know that there's something different inside of you. There's some different way that you want to be. You're not like every other kid. You're not like every other person. You're reading different books. I grew up in a family where my siblings, I knew how to read at 3 and 4 years old. But you know how to do that when your sister's 16. Of course you know how to read. And you grow up with people that are telling you all the things you can't be. When all you know, and you may not even know that you're bold. You may not even know that it's not normal. You may not know that you're going to be called a global African one day on a Saturday in Ghana. You just know there's something. And then all of these people start telling you what you can't do. My kindergarten teacher said, I talk too much. Well, that's true. But my father said it's because she's bored. She already knows how to read. She already knows how to do the math. Because her siblings are older. So she knows these things. They said, no, it's because she's a distraction. She's disruptive. And my mom was like, okay, don't be disruptive. And I'm like, I'm not disruptive. I'm very curious. And if the teacher's talking about something and I've already read about it, then I'm going to kind of say maybe or maybe not. So I learned how to temper the boldness. I was told, don't talk so much. I was told, don't talk so fast. I don't really know what to compare it to because everybody talks like I talk in New Jersey. I was told, don't be so loud. Don't laugh so loud. You know, every time I tried something, the teacher or the counselor would say the opposite. So my parents sent me to this boarding school. I got accepted. They couldn't afford it. I got some scholarships. And the nuns there said, we are training the future women of America to change the world. I said, this is my kind of school. And when I got ready to graduate, my cousin, who was ahead of me studying engineering, said, you're good at math and science, you should be an engineer. I said, why? He said, because you always have a job. Yes, now you're talking my language. So I decided to study engineering. Here we go again. The counselor calls my parents to school. Oh, Janeen says she wants to be an engineer. My father looks at me, what's an engineer? I don't know. And they said, we think she's trying too hard. And so my father says, but you told us that if we sent her to this school, that you would be training the women of the future. So it sounds like you did your job, we did our job, she should go be an engineer. And then my father says to me, and why do you want to be an engineer? And I said, because Lysander, that's my cousin, said I should be an engineer. And my dad said, oh, that's the way black people do it. If her cousin said she could be an engineer, she could be an engineer. Now he's talking to this white nun at my school who's looking at him like, but this woman was very, very committed to making sure that I didn't think that I could become an engineer. And so all of the things that I was thinking I could be when I was younger were fading fast. They were fading because society was trying to keep me down. It was fading because the very teachers that had been educating me for 4 years didn't believe in me. And it was fading because I didn't have anyone that looked like me in the industry. I didn't have a Patricia, we didn't have these types of role models. And so I move into the third decade and I graduate from A&T. I'm a proud Aggie. And I start my work. And in mechanical engineering, I did what most traditional MEs do, which is I worked in manufacturing. Manufacturing is a very, very difficult place to work as a woman, especially when you're on a line. My background is in healthcare, so I'm a healthcare technologist. And when I worked here in Ghana, I worked for GE, and I ran global health across sub-Saharan Africa. And the products that we brought to Africa were meant to be used in communities such as this because they're solar powered, they're handheld, things like that. And so I didn't know when I was taking the toaster apart at my mom's that eventually I'd be doing that. But that was a part of me becoming who I am today. I finish college, I take the manufacturing role, and I start having people that work for me that are twice my age, mostly white men, on a manufacturing floor. It is the most volatile place to work as a woman, even today, to this day. You're wearing clothes that don't make you feel comfortable, hard-toe shoes, hard hats, whether you're climbing, on the side of siphons to figure out what's going wrong in there. But you're learning something that builds this boldness in you that, once again, the world isn't ready for. I learned how to wear ugly clothes and look cute in them. I learned how to do the same work and make the challenges become something that other people could understand so that when we fix the problems, we would know how to make sure that other people that look like me, other women that were coming along would understand the problems that were happening in manufacturing and learn how to solve them, because they didn't make that part of the job easy for me. They made it very difficult for me to understand, and that was on purpose. But there's an empathy and a kindness in a person like myself, like yourself, that wants other people to have a different experience, and so I did that. I think that one of the other things I took with me from that experience is this resiliency that started like being like someone described it as a grain of sand in your shoe that just becomes, it just grits at you, it just bothers you. But it's resiliency because you're learning how to live beyond the expectations of people, because they have very low expectations of you. It's very hard to lead and to operate in a place where people don't believe in you, where you don't feel comfortable being yourself, where you have people reporting to you that are disrespectful. But they're lessons that you kind of tuck into your pocket and you keep taking them with you. And it's a very, very dangerous thing when a woman starts to recognize who she is. It's also a very powerful thing. And it's not dangerous for you, it's dangerous for all the people that are going to have a problem with it. But so be it. When I left the manufacturing world, I went to business school. Because what I found out was that I was a pretty good engineer, but I was a really, really great leader. And so I went to business school and I began to run tech businesses. And when I entered that next phase of my career, things began to really take off for me. It's when I took on my global assignments. It's when I started to say yes to things that I noticed no one else in the room was holding their hand up for first, but everybody wanted the credit for it when it was over. I didn't become a yes woman. I had this debate with my brother. He's like, so someone wrote an article about me, and it's what happens when you say yes. And he, being my brother, says, oh, so you're a yes woman. I said, no, you don't understand. I said yes to things that made a difference. I watched the room, and I watched who wasn't offering an opportunity, and I started raising my hand. Who wants to take an assignment in Brazil? I'll do it. Who wants to move to Africa and run a business? I'll do it. And these things began to change the course of my career because the leadership began to develop. And I started running teams, and then I started running businesses. And when I became the leader of a P&L, budgetary responsibility is key because boldness lies in your ability to make decisions that run the business. Many times they give us roles, and by us, I am speaking a lot to women, but I do mean people of color in general. They give us roles that may have these long titles and this long JD, but no financial responsibility. If you're not in charge of the money, trust me, you're not in charge of anything. Am I right? You have to be in charge of some budget. They give you this big job and say you're the queen and the king of all things wonderful, and then you have no money to run it. Things changed for me when I started running a budget. When you're responsible for millions and millions of dollars for a multinational company, you now have the ability to create change. And so despite some of the differences that I may have faced even moving from America to Africa, I've lived in Africa, I've lived in China, I've lived in Saudi, I've lived in Dubai, I've worked in some really, really amazing places. And every time I've been a different person because you have to become ingrained into the fabric of the society. And I love doing that. Ever since I was a little kid, spinning that globe in my parents' house when I didn't really know what it would become. When I came to Ghana and we brought this product that had done terribly in the United States, our CEO then thought it would be the future of healthcare in the United States, and it failed tremendously. So one of the biggest mistakes I'd ever made in my career was with this product. We designed it wrong. We didn't think respectfully for the communities. We thought in a very arrogant American way that we knew the answer to everything. We did it terribly. And so we thought, how can we make it right? So I put my things on a container and I moved to Africa. And I said, if we're going to build a product that serves this market, we should live here, we should hire people from here, and they should tell us what we're going to do. So that's what we did. And we built an entire staff, and my job was to work my way out of a job at some point. Although I fell in love with the country and wanted to be here forever, my job was to make sure that other people could do the work that were from here. So we built this team, we built this product over again. We started from scratch. It was very, very humbling, which also made me very, very bold, because I had to admit that I owned the mistake. And let me tell you one thing that doesn't happen in many rooms, particularly if you're an engineer. Nobody's going to admit they made a mistake. It's hard to get someone to say that. And my team and I said, we blew it. We did it wrong, but if you reinvest, we will do it right again. And then we had to convince a company like GE that we should hire communities of people and build this diverse team that didn't look anything like what we were used to working, the way we were used to working in the States. It meant that we had to advocate for non-traditional healthcare workers or people that didn't necessarily have the same degree of training. But they were the right people to help us solve the problem. I worked with midwives. We delivered babies. I've never had a baby, but I've watched many be delivered. We learned the process so that we could fix the problem. And we did it without counting on ourselves. We counted on other people. It created a practice that exists to this day. Many of my friends are still here working at GE. They're still solving this problem. They're still building this product and pushing it out to solve. The last two things I'll share is when I left here, it was one of the hardest things I had to do in my entire career. I had to leave here to go take an even bigger job in the United States because I was promoted. And I was promoted to one of the top senior levels at the company. And I needed to go back and take the knowledge from here and figure out how we could solve problems globally. And so the doors began to open up, and I decided to say yes and go back. I left GE a few years after that because I was given an opportunity to build something at Wikipedia. And it wasn't even a job I was looking for. I was actually looking for a sabbatical when Wikipedia called me and asked me if I would build the office of the COO. How did they find out about me? A member of the GE board was good friends with someone on the Wikipedia board. He asked that person if they knew who I was. And, things kind of moved from there. So relationship is critical. And showing up as myself turned out to not be the worst thing I could do. Turned out that it was actually the person that they wanted to come solve it. So when people started to tell me that I had a career that was a little too spotty, you've done a little of this, a little of that, you've been here, you've been there, you have a little bit of this experience, you've done a little bit of that, we don't know what to do with you. Let me tell you what you do with a person that knows a little bit about everything. You make them a COO, because that's what the COO does. They have to know how to solve everything. Every problem operationally, HR, politics, PR, public affairs, you have to know how to do it when you're a COO. I took on the role of Wikipedia, and the toughest thing in America, at least in my adult life, happened because the Black Lives Matter movement took off. And so, it took off publicly. George Floyd was killed, and we were called to the carpet as the largest source of news in written media on how we would tell those stories. I made a decision that the Black Lives Matter page on Wikipedia would last through perpetuity and never be able to be taken down. There's a whole lot of stuff that happens with Wikipedia on how pages stay up and stay down. What you just need to know is that was a very hard thing to do, and it was a very dangerous thing to do. I live in a loft in Washington, D.C., and there were drones flying outside of my loft. I don't even know how they knew where I lived, because working for Wikipedia, my household had to be anonymous because of the way that the platform works. So I lived in this building under an anonymous name. And during the insurrection, the then president, the former president, whose name shall not be mentioned on this stage, called out my name. And it started a whole period of very dangerous time. And if you take a look at my last name, it's not the most common name. So I began to worry for my mother, for my family, for my nieces and nephews, all of the people that carry that name. So we had to have a family call. We had to talk about what could possibly happen, all because I took this job at Wikipedia, which wasn't supposed to be dangerous, but it was. And when I tell you that it was dangerously wonderful, not because I like danger, but because it forced me to sharpen that edge of boldness once again. I made a decision, I stuck to it. It was the right thing to do for Black people. It was the right thing to do if you want to tell the truth about the news. The last thing I'll share is after I did that, when I left Wikipedia, I have an opportunity now to run the National Society of Black Engineers, an organization that I've been a part of since I was in college. I came back when NSBE asked me to come be their CEO because I was tired of fighting for white people at the time. And that's just the truth. I said, if I'm going to keep doing this, I need to do something for Black people. And I need to do it not adjacent, but in it. And so I wanted to come and help us transition to our 50th year, which will be in 2025. And I wanted to ensure that I did my part to drive the mission of people like me, like you, like us, to do the work that they do. I got a phone call beforehand, and I got an email, and it said, this is a confidential email from the White House. We'd like to talk with you about serving on an advisory board for STEM for President Biden. And then it said a bunch of things after that. And it referenced my work at Wikipedia and my global footprint, my work with the United Nations. And it said, we'd like to have a chance to talk with you. I thought it was spam. So I thought I was being pranked, especially since I worked for Wikipedia, because I was always being hacked. You work at Wiki, you get hacked all the time. So I said, this is a joke. So I just ignore it. I don't respond to the White House. The second time I got the note, it said, it's confidential, you can't share this with anyone, we'd like to talk with you. So I was like, I'm gonna ask somebody. I called a friend of mine in politics. I said, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but I got an email from the White House. Do you think I'm being pranked? And she's like, are you crazy? That's real, it's the White House, you have to call them back. So I call them back and I have this conversation, and I start with this. And I'm not being rude, I'm just speaking my truth. I said, listen, if you're interested in talking to someone about a role at the White House, you should not lead with, this is confidential, don't tell anyone. It sounds fake. And you know what they said to me? We hear that a lot. I said, then why do you do it? I said, you almost missed out on one of the best things that could happen for President Biden because I thought it was fake, okay? And so we end up having this great conversation. I now also work for President Biden. I have a chance to advise him on the things that are in the STEM world. And one of them will be even this conversation and the work that we're doing here. I can't wait to tell him about the bold new normal. But I did tell them they need to check how they send their emails because it's not right. So I'll stop here because if Precious comes up to me with that sign one more time, I'm going to get kicked off the stage. But I just wanted to share a little bit about my journey because there was a time when I never would have said that I was bold. I would have said that I was a lot of things, and none of them would have been good. I would have said something about my body type or, I got C's in this or that. But now I'm so sure that you can be bold, you can also be humble, you can be brilliant, you can lead, you can dress the way you want, you can wear the tattoos you have, even if your mom doesn't like them. And at the end of the day, you will have an impact on society that even you may not be able to understand, but I can assure you it will outlive you. And that is the most important thing that you could leave behind. It is legacy. And so I challenge you all at the Bold New Normal to kind of just flip that a little bit and say that bold will be your new normal. And then just go for it. Thank you. Down.
Thank you very much, Janeen. Can we keep clapping for Janeen? Thank you very much, Janeen.
Thank you.
You can be bold, you can be humble, and you can still make an impact in your society. Don't let anyone tell you you're doing too much. You can still be bold, and you can be humble, and you would still create an impact in your society. At this point, I would make way for questions for Janeen. I'm not being biased, she was the first person. Can we get a microphone here?
Thank you, Janeen, for the presentation. My question is, in accepting that bold is the new normal, how do you handle imposter syndrome? You see yourself, or everybody sees you to be a very bold lady, but you know, or there is this funny voice that keeps telling you that you know you really can't do this. How do you handle that?
Imposter syndrome has been chasing me since I was old enough to really know that there was something different about me. Whether it was the raspiness in my voice, I have a deep voice. It seemed like it was always something. And I won't try to tell you that it's not something that I fight often. I think I just approach it differently. First and foremost, it has had to be steeped in who I believe I am in my faith. I don't know that I'd be able to stand here. I'm sure that I wouldn't. If I didn't have a belief, a Christian belief that I could tie to all of this. And so it's steeped in that first and foremost. But I cannot tell you that it's not something that I face every day. I think that I'll get off of this stage and I'll call Lucy tomorrow and be like, you know, and she's Lucy. She's just going to be like, oh, Janeen, you were fine. But in my head, I'm going to be like, I should have said this or I shouldn't have said that. And so I have had to learn that my style is my style, my look is my look, my intelligence at whatever level it is. I'm not trying to compete, with Rhodes Scholars because I'm not one. But I know that I bring something that has an impact. And the more that I've meet people along the way that have had experiences with me, it follows me. And I find that it also encourages me. I also surround myself, I'm very, very close to my family, and they remind me on a daily basis that I'm not special or important or anything. So maybe you just need people to remind you that you're regular, because my family reminds me, they're like, you're not like Oprah, you're just like nobody here, go clean the bathroom. So I think that helps. I'm like, I can stand here, and I know that at the same time I'm a representation of them, and they're very proud of me. But when I leave here, none of them are going to ask me how it went today. They don't care. They're like, are you going to get by the market and bring me something? That's all they care about. So it's something that has to happen within you, and it is hard. And there's a practice that you're going to have to gain, which means operating on a level of serenity within yourself about who you are, even if it's not who you are. But that's okay. I'm very good with me being who I am, and if there are things that I can learn from you. Patricia and I are very different leaders, I'm sure. But I had a chance to talk with her, and I had several questions for her because I know there's something that I can learn from her. But it doesn't mean that I have to be her. But we can glean from one another. But it's a very hard thing. It's a nasty, nasty part of life that we have to live through and work through.
Wow. Okay. So I have a question here, and then I'll come to you. So let me take them.
Thank you very much, Janeen, for your presentation.
Thank you.
My name is Sompa Mensah, and I'm a beacon of excellence.
You have to talk a little bit louder.
All right.
Because I can't hear.
My name is Sompa Mensah, and I'm a beacon of excellence from the Central Leadership Program. During your presentation, you mentioned that you said yes to the right things. And there was a question that was asked when you were in the US that who was going to come to Africa to start a business. And you said you do it. So I'm asking, what is one thing that pushed you to step out of your comfort zone? I'm sure coming to Africa was not something you saw as comfortable. So my question is, what pushed you to step out of your comfort zone?
So I said yes to some things. I don't know if they were all the right things. I just want to be clear. I said yes to a lot of things, and they weren't necessarily the right things. I've just learned to find the win in everything. So, but I did say yes to many things. Coming to Africa was probably the easiest yes. Ghana wasn't my first time to Africa. I had done missions work in Kenya and other places. But I had been coming back and forth here with my colleague, who's become my dear friend, Alex Camphor-Dumas, and we would come over here to do work for GE. We were kind of scoping out some things. In addition to maintaining our day job, we had to come over here and we were just trying out some practices, meeting with the Ministry of Health, trying to decide. I knew that I wanted to be here if we were ever given an opportunity. It was a yes for me right away. Now, within GE, my other colleagues said that I was committing career suicide. They were like, you are making a big mistake. I mean, and to call it suicide, I was like, who's the drama queen now? You know, to say that I was actually ruining my career by taking a global assignment. But when I looked at that person, even though the people that said it to me were more senior than me at the time, I felt that their careers were very narrow in scope. And I just believed that if I remembered who I was decades before, this little girl spinning this globe, I owed it to her because she was just dreaming about seeing the world, and now I was being given an opportunity. I also had enough intelligence to know that spending multiple years as an expat for a multinational was going to be a game changer for me financially. And I didn't care what any of them said because none of them pay my bills, okay? And so I became an expat. And I was an expat for almost 10 years. I can't even, somebody knows what that means, okay? It has changed the game for me financially, so that when I came home, I could say yes and I could say no to a whole lot of stuff. You want to do this? No, I don't want to do that at all. And I don't have to. And so the very people that then said I was committing career suicide, years later have all invited me back to do these talks on how to plan my career the way I did. And I had no idea. I wasn't planning it at the time. I was just rolling. And I was just giving it a try. And for me, an opportunity to get out of Jersey, I was like, I'm down. I also really like the fashion.
Okay. So, you know, some people have not asked questions the whole day, but I can see their hands up now. So let me be fair and then give it to those people, okay? So let me go with him. Can you please get him the microphone? Hey, he's asked that question. Some people will say I don't like them, so let me take the microphone.
You're in charge. I'm not gonna
I should
do
just leave it
this.
for you, right? I'll come back to you then.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
Hi.
Janeen, for your
How are you?
presentation. I'm fine. My name is Achi from Type Company Limited. You gave us a bit of history about where you came from growing up, your parents, your dad, and how it formed you in being bold. I want to ask this question. Most people see people who are bold and are candid about situations as maybe they are proud, they are disrespectful. In a corporate setting, how do you express your candid opinions about situations and without being seen as overbearing or disrespectful?
I don't think I'm seen as disrespectful, but I can't guarantee they don't think I'm overbearing. So, well, I think that a lesson that I learned from the project that we were on that I said went terribly wrong is a part of what's in this title, which is about shared success. So I definitely learned that working in isolation is not the right way to solve a problem. And so inclusivity has become a big part of who I am as a leader. I also think that's because of so much of what we experience in the United States and what it means to be a part of this like DEI effort where we're considered some sort of special exempt people that you have to put laws and rules and budgets around just because we're black. I'm like, if we're smart and talented and do the job, what's it matter? But I have had to engage groups of people that are different than me in every way. And what I've learned is those are the best teams that you could ever build. And so what I try to do in rooms is always hear the voice of others, especially knowing what it's like to be considered an other. So I'm trying to make sure that I identify voices that haven't spoken, ideas that haven't been heard, and calling out in a good way other people. I think that that's very important because you can't do this by yourself. And collaboration is critical in how you're going to solve a problem. Now, the other thing that I've had to learn, which is very difficult, because I'm jovial, I love to have a good time, and I don't want people to not like me. That's just not who I am. But that's just the way it is, particularly when you're in these levels of jobs. If I were trying to work for everyone to like me, we wouldn't have any success. The revenue at NSBE has grown 49% under my leadership. I can't do that with everyone liking me. We paid off all of our debt. We've become a different level of an organization. I can't do that with everyone liking me. Someone's not going to be happy, but they won't feel disrespected on my watch, because that's just not a part of my character. And to the degree that I can help it, they won't feel overlooked. But that's a part of my character. And my character is something that I surrender daily to God. And it's very difficult to do that because I'm also kind of bossy. So I'm like, but this is the platform and the assignment that you've given me. So how can I use the person that you made me to be in a way that is a reflection of you? And I can't say that I'm perfect at it, but I can say without a doubt that I do try every day. I do. I have good intentions, and sometimes they fall flat. And that's just what it means to be a human being.
Thank you very much. You can't get everybody to like you. When we were kids, they used to tell us if you get everybody to like you means you're selling pokey. You know pokey, right? Yeah, that's what the kids like. So you can't get everybody to like you. I understand. Can we have our lady there?
Thank you, Janeen. You seem to have, you have a very interesting story, if I should say it that way, looking at where you started from, not even knowing whether you wanted to do engineering, but because your cousin said you should, and then you did. If you were to speak to little girls today, would you advise them to plan a career path, or look within them and go with the flow? Which one would you advise, looking at the experience you have gathered over the years and the economies you have worked under globally? Thank you.
The thing that I would advise, and do advise little girls when I see them, is not necessarily what they should study or who they should become. What I would like to do is look at them and see who they are, and then just keep encouraging them to be that. If I see a little girl and she's dancing and doing cartwheels and just being herself, I want to encourage her to keep being that. And that's going to help her become who she is. What I don't want to do is say, oh, you should sit down and be quiet. Because I know what that feels like, because I was that little girl. So I want to be able to look at her and tell her, if she wears glasses, I always make sure, if I see a little girl in glasses, I always tell her how much I love her glasses. Because I grew up wearing glasses when it wasn't cool and when they weren't stylish, and people made fun of me. So I always make sure I say something about her glasses or her hair or her outfit. I'm like, who picked out your outfit? And she's like, me. I'm like, I love it. Because I think that is what helps her. Now, if she says to me, I'm not good at math, then I might talk with her about my experience in math. And I will also talk to her parents, because one of the things I want people to know about me is that I didn't make A's in math. My cousin said I was good in it. He didn't say I made A's. I mean, good for me was C's. I passed. I made A's in some other things, but not in the classes that people would have thought I should have made A's in to get to where I am today. It's proof that grades are very, very important, but there's a full package, and we can't be manipulated as a people to be told that if you don't make an A in physics, that you'll never be the CEO of an engineering company, because that's not true, right? And so my hope is always to see a person where they are and then inspire them to be who they are, because I feel like that was missed for me. And I don't think it was intentional, at least not from my mom. I think other people, it was very intentional. And I now know that the more people try to stop me, or the more people get frustrated with me or say that I'm something or other, I'm just kind of like, if I'm really not that important, why am I bothering you so much? So clearly there's something to who I've become. And if I can inspire that little girl to do that, maybe I would have gotten there a little bit faster, but I also think that, God's timing and all the experiences that you have to have along the way are just as important.
Thank you very much. So I'll take last 2 questions. Let me be fair. So I'll take one from this session, one from here. I was going to give an opportunity to the people here, but it seems you don't have a question. Let me take the 2 and then I'll come to the last person. So I'll take one from here and then, okay, so one here, and then let me go with this person first.
If she gives you a chance, you better take it. Oh, wait, I'm
The
not gonna be able
microphone.
to- yeah, I won't be able to hear. Here we go.
Thank you very much. I'm Deladem with the Central Leadership Program. And my question is, you've spoken about pushback from your family and the people around you. As a global African, have you had pushback in the countries you visited and led in? And do they play out differently? And what are the things that you've done to solve such problems? Thank you.
I think that because my career has taken me to multiple countries, all of which are places where women are often not regarded or respected in the same way, it's been the same experience. I just wear it in hijab or I wear it in, American clothes, whatever. It has been there. I've even had it here. And so I came to Ghana with this well, let me tell you something. We're all brown people here, so this is going to be great. And my colleagues were like, so look, you are still an American, so back it up. And they made it very clear that I was American and that was different about me. And so there were instances where it was very hard. And leading and building a team here and working with government and leadership, I definitely had some difficulties. I had some really difficult conversations, whether it was peer to peer or leader to, higher up. In the Middle East, it was really difficult for me not being able to even do something like check myself into a hotel. Working in Saudi, the men work over here, the women worked over here, and like I said, I see my colleagues and be like, hey, I want to give them a hug, and they're like, you're going to go to jail. And so, these things were very challenging for me. And I had to learn to accept the differences of society and still hold my voice in a way that could have value. I think in the end, it adds to the bag of things that have become who I am, like all the things that make up the book of Janeen. Now they've just become so everyday regular to me that I don't pay as much attention to them. And other people ask questions, and I have to learn how to use those experiences as a way to guide them. But I think I've forgotten about most of them. Now I think I'm having the same experience in the U.S., and maybe it's prepared me differently. And depending on what happens with our government in the United States, because we're kind of going through something over there, could be very different very soon for not just myself, but for women, for Black people in general.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you very much for
I'll
your
come to you.
submission and opportunity. My question. So in being bold, living as a new normal, at what point do you show vulnerability, and at what point do you show competence?
Well, hopefully I've shown both of them today, or else I didn't get the job right at all. See, but vulnerability, I think everyone says, oh, you have to be vulnerable, you have to be vulnerable. You have to find the areas of vulnerability that you're willing to expose people to. Most people will know 3 to 5 things about me. I tell the same vulnerability stories, things about my father, my siblings, there's some basics, and then there's other things that are just private to me that I hold. But I had to make a decision. These are the things that I'm willing to share, flaws in my career, mistakes that I've made. And when I do that, I show the lesson that I've learned and the things that I would do differently. Both can be true at the same time. you can stand in boldness and in power and be both vulnerable and competent at the same time. It's like someone asking you not to be a woman and a mother at the same time. You can be both of them, right? So I would challenge you to not separate the two, but determine what parts of yourself do you want to make vulnerable to people, and then be competent in it. But don't separate the two. Competence is something that you should carry with you all the time. I never would want you to dumb it down, ever. And don't feel like opening your coat up and showing people something about you means that you're doing that. You don't have to do that.
So I'll take my last question.
You sure?
All right, thank you.
My last question.
Great.
Okay.
So it's been amazing hearing your story, and in fact, hearing the story of the other leaders here. I work with university students who are now starting their journey, and a lot of times they see themselves, of course, inexperienced, with a lot of fear. So I want to take you back to when you were an undergraduate. How did you feel? Did you see yourself as a person who was going to be doing something great? Were there any fears, and how did you gather yourself to take those bold steps, even doing it afraid?
I would say yes and yes. My best friend just asked me the other day, she was like, did you ever think you were going to be awesome? I'm like, yes. It was everybody else that didn't. And so then I just stopped believing it. So when I stopped believing it, the world had won. And for a period of time in my life, I didn't believe it at all. And I think a part of that was my graduation. Now, I think the difference is that I went to an HBCU, that's a historically black college and university in the States. So going to an HBCU, I was surrounded with people that looked like me, and it was very different than my all-white high school. So I got some strength in feeling great about myself again. And I graduated on the dean's list, so I was a Pi Tau Sigma graduate. That's the Mechanical Engineering Honor Society. And I graduated and had a job. So I was like, I'm gonna get paid, and I finished school, and I don't have any debt. So those were my goals. I didn't know going into the work assignment that I would get knocked down again. And so even with the work we do in NSBE, we've created these leaders that finish school like, I got this, I can do this, and they're brilliant and they're smart and they deserve a great work experience. The challenge is now the workplace. They're not ready for students that look like us to walk in there having solved big problems, taken big jobs, traveled different places. And I'm finding, at least in the United States, they're not giving our students quality jobs, good work. So we're not staying in the workplace. We graduate at 23% in NSBE. We're only 9% of the workforce. There's something wrong with the workforce, not us. And so the next phase of what I'd like to see happen is the training that we're doing with our partners to say, when you hire these people, you have to understand the value of who you're hiring. And going back to my collegiate self, I think that was the problem. I felt good about my graduation. I had finished. I had these great grades. I already had a job. I thought the next thing was just not to go be the boss of everything, but to at least be able to perform in the workplace. I don't think I was given that support initially. So I also think that there's dual training you have to do then, right? Your students are prepared, but I think there are conversations that you could start to have maybe with hiring managers or other people that haven't been trained with how to work with us, which again is crazy to me because we're just people, right?
Thank you very much. Jenny will take your closing words.
Closing words.
Yes.
I'll finish how I started. The bold new normal is bold as the new normal. And I think that, I know that if you can make connections here today, surround yourself with like-mindeds, and trust me, if you're here on a Saturday hanging out listening to the stories and experiences of others, you're like-minded and you're hungry for something different. If you make this a priority, then I can guarantee you that next year you'll show up here and you'll be able to bring a different experience with you. And each one of you should have a story to tell that expresses how you walked out of here, taking what you learned and used it, and then bring it back and help other people understand that. So that bold will just become the new normal. Thank you.